What happens when someone you meet online makes you feel more alive than the person you married? In today's story, I'll share how one conversation turned into a secret relationship and how what started as a flirtation became the biggest temptation of my life. He was everything my husband wasn't, including physically. But what I didn't expect was how much I would regret everything that came after. This is a story about lust, lies, and the moment when fantasy turns into something far more real and far more dangerous. I met him online. At first, it was innocent, bored scrolling at night after my husband had fallen asleep on the couch for the third night in a row. We weren't fighting, we were just fading. We used to have fire, laughter, passion, but after 8 years and 2 kids, it was all replaced by schedules, routines, and sleepy goodnights. So I made a fake profile. Nothing scandalous, just a different name, a different city. I told myself I was just curious, not looking for anything, not really. And that's when he messaged me. Alexei. He was Russian, bold, director, confident in a way that felt electric through the screen. He didn't ask for small talk. He asked about what I wanted, what I missed, and somehow he knew exactly where to press. Our messages turned into voice notes. His accent, low, deep, sensual, felt like silk in my ears. I caught myself smiling like a teenager again, fixing my hair before replying, hiding my phone from my husband, even when he wasn't asking questions. The first time we video chatted, I remember feeling nervous, like I was cheating already, and maybe I was. Emotionally, I'd already left the room. He was stunning, not in a movie star way, just intense, sharp eyes, easy grin. He made me feel like I was the only woman alive. Then came the night he sent that photo. I wasn't prepared. It was more than anything I had ever seen. I mean that literally. I'd been with a few men before I married, but nothing like this. He joked about it, said he hoped it didn't scare me. I laughed, but deep down I was breathless, shocked, and curious. Suddenly, my quiet suburban life felt unbearably small. I started fantasizing, wondering, dreaming, comparing. Over the next few weeks, our chats turned into video calls late at night. He'd ask me what I was wearing, what I'd do if he were there. I told myself it was just fun, just digital, just fantasy. But fantasy has a way of bleeding into reality. And then, he said he was coming to Berlin for work. A quick trip, one night. He asked if I wanted to meet. No pressure, he said, just coffee. But we both knew it wouldn't be just coffee. I told my husband I had a training seminar in another part of town, booked a hotel room. My hands were shaking the entire day. When I saw Alexei in person for the first time, something inside me flipped. He was taller than I imagined. His presence filled the room, and his eyes, God, his eyes, like he already knew what I looked like under everything. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. One touch, one kiss, and it was like fire had returned to my bloodstream. Yes, we slept together. And yes, he was exactly as big as I remembered. But here's the part I didn't expect. It wasn't good. Not because of him, but because of me. It was too much, too intense, too fast, too wrong. My body was there, but my mind was spiraling. I kept thinking about my husband, about our kids, about the way he makes coffee for me every morning even when I don't ask, about the way he holds my hand when we cross the street. Still, after all these years. And suddenly, I didn't feel sexy anymore. I felt small, distant, like I had stepped outside my own life and couldn't find the way back. After Alexei left, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and cried. Not because I missed him, but because I missed me. the woman I used to be before I crossed that line. I went home that night and looked at my husband while he slept. He didn't know. He probably never will. But I knew. And that was enough. I deleted everything the next morning. The profile, the messages, the photos. And ever since, I've been trying to rebuild something inside myself. Yes, my husband still forgets to listen sometimes. Yes, the sex is quieter, slower, less urgent. But it's real. And now I know that's what matters most. I never thought I'd be that woman. You know the one. Bored wife, late night phone in hand, scrolling through conversations she shouldn't be having. But here I was, married for 9 years, 2 kids, a house, a husband who was always exhausted, always busy, always just there, but not really with me. We didn't fight. We didn't kiss either. We were fine, and fine can be a very lonely place. It started on a language exchange app, of all things. I was brushing up on my Spanish. He wasn't Spanish. His name was Dima, Russian, 35, lived in Spain. Tall, lean, a little rough around the edges. His first message? "You look like trouble in that profile pic." I should have deleted him right then. Instead, I replied. We started chatting, slowly at first, then every night. It wasn't sexual at first, it was fun. He asked me things my husband hadn't asked in years. What makes you laugh? What scares you? What turns you on? 3 weeks in, I sent him a photo, just a selfie. No makeup, just me in bed, hair messy, cheeks flushed. He replied instantly, "Beautiful! You'd be dangerous in person." And then he sent his photo, no face, just below the waist. I stared at it, stunned. Not because it was vulgar, but because it was unreal. It was, and I say this with no exaggeration, the biggest I had ever seen in my life. I laughed at first, nervous laughter. Then something else hit me, curiosity. And beneath that, desire. I hadn't felt wanted like that in a very long time. My husband was gentle, decent, predictable. Dima? He looked like he could ruin me, and part of me wanted to be ruined. We started video calling. He didn't push. He didn't need to. He waited. And the more he waited, the more I wanted to give in. Eventually, we made a plan. I told my husband I needed a weekend alone to clear my head. He didn't ask questions, just kissed my forehead and said, "Have fun." I flew to Valencia. I met Dima in the lobby of a cheap beachside hotel. He looked even better in person, taller, broader, darker eyes. He didn't smile much, but when he looked at me, it felt like being set on fire. We barely spoke. We went straight to the room. I won't describe everything, but I will say this. It was overwhelming. His body, his size, his energy. I thought I was ready. I wasn't. I'd fantasized about it for weeks, but the reality was almost too much. Halfway through, I had to stop. He held me gently and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded. But I wasn't. Not physically, not emotionally. Something cracked inside me. In that hotel bed, next to a man I barely knew, I suddenly felt exposed. Not just naked, but raw. Vulnerable. This wasn't about sex anymore. It wasn't even about Dima. It was about me, about the woman I used to be, the woman I thought I could rediscover in someone else's arms. But all I found was guilt. After he fell asleep, I sat in the bathroom in the dark. I looked at myself in the mirror, smeared mascara, flushed skin, and whispered, "What did you just do?" I flew home the next morning. My husband picked me up from the airport. He had made lasagna with the kids. He looked tired, but happy to see me. I hugged him longer than usual. He doesn't know. No one does. And I'll never tell. But the truth is, that weekend broke something in me. I thought I'd feel powerful. Instead, I felt lost. Yes, Dima was the biggest I'd ever seen. But that night left the biggest emptiness I've ever felt. They say some mistakes are worth making. But what if the mistake feels perfect until the very end? In this story, I'll tell you how I met a man online, just looking for conversation, and ended up in a situation that almost destroyed my marriage. He was the most physically overwhelming man I'd ever been with. But that's not what broke me. Stay with me, because this story isn't what you think it is. It started because I couldn't sleep. My husband was snoring next to me, peacefully, like always, and I was wide awake, again. I reached for my phone, not to do anything wrong, just to feel something. I opened a chat app I hadn't used in years, a place where strangers talked about books, politics, languages, and sometimes flirted just enough to feel alive. His username was RedWolf82. He messaged me first. "You seem like someone with thoughts that keep her up at night." I replied, "You're not wrong." His real name was Pavel, Russian, 40, divorced, a photographer who lived between Istanbul and Tbilisi. He sent me a photo of a rooftop at dusk. No people, just color, texture, light. Our chats were slow burns, long, thoughtful, laced with subtle tension. I told him I was married. He didn't back off, just said, "I don't want to take anything from you, but if you ever want to feel something again, you know where I am." I didn't know why I couldn't stop replying. Maybe it was because I hadn't been kissed like I mattered in years. Maybe it was the way he never complimented my looks, just my mind, my words, my silences. Then came the first voice message. His voice was deep, accented, almost sleepy. He said my name like a secret. Weeks passed. Then he said, "I'll be in Prague for 3 days. No pressure. But I'd like to see the person behind the mind I've been falling into." I told my husband I was going on a wellness weekend with girlfriends, packed a single black dress, and a toothbrush. We met at a quiet jazz bar. I was trembling when I saw him, tall, quiet, with eyes that searched mine like he already knew the ending. We drank wine, talked little, and then he leaned in and whispered, "If we go now, I'll show you something unforgettable." I followed him. The hotel was modest. The room, dimension. He undressed me slowly, like he was unwrapping something fragile. And when I saw him, all of him, I froze. He was enormous, not just big, massive, the kind of size that makes your body second-guess itself. I laughed nervously. "That's intimidating." He smiled softly. "Then I'll be careful." And he was. The night was intense, overwhelming, surreal. And even though it was what I thought I wanted, the thrill, the fire, the escape, something shifted halfway through. I looked at myself in the hotel mirror, flushed, shaking, and I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I wasn't empowered. I wasn't awakened. I was lost. The next morning, he kissed my forehead and said, "You'll remember me longer than you should." He was right. I cried in the taxi. Not because I regretted the experience, but because it didn't fix anything. Not the distance in my marriage. Not the ache inside me. Not the emptiness I'd been trying to fill. I had chased something wild, and caught it. And it had left me emptier than before. I told my husband the retreat was fine. He hugged me that night. He still doesn't know. But every time he kisses my neck now, gently, sleepily, lovingly, I remember Pavel. And I wish I didn't. I thought I had everything: a husband, a child, a quiet, stable life. But then I met a man online who reminded me what it felt like to be seen, desired, wanted. What happened next wasn't planned, and it definitely wasn't gentle. But this isn't just a story about cheating. It's a story about a woman who lost herself, and the man whose body and presence shook her world. I was never the type to chase danger. I liked calm, routine. I married young, had my daughter by 28, and built a life with my husband around shared groceries, shared goals, shared calendars. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being mine. I became a mother, a scheduler, a wife, but not a woman. And I missed her, the version of me who wore red lipstick for no reason, who danced in the mirror, who imagined things I stopped allowing myself to want. I joined a private book forum during lockdown. Harmless enough, I thought. That's where I met him. He went by the name Sasha K, and his book reviews were sharp, funny, laced with just enough flirtation to make me lean in. He sent me a private message after I commented on a Russian novel. No one reads that book unless they've been through something. What broke you? I stared at that message for a long time before I answered. I told him, motherhood, marriage, monotony. That night, we talked for 2 hours. Over the next few weeks, it became daily, then nightly. He was bold, unapologetic, dirty in the exact way I didn't know I was starving for. And one night, out of nowhere, he sent a photo, not of a face, not of a flower or skyline, but of himself, exposed, confident, stunningly large. It wasn't vulgar, it was bold. And honest to God, I gasped. I hadn't seen anything like it in real life. Not on my husband, not ever. And something deep inside me reacted. My body remembered it had needs. We video called once. Just once. It was enough. He asked nothing, demanded nothing. But he said, if you ever want to know what it's like to feel worshipped, come to Warsaw. I don't know why I booked the ticket. I told my husband I needed a solo weekend. He said, take it. You deserve a break. I arrived, took a cab to the address he sent. A modern apartment, clean and warm. He opened the door, shirtless. He didn't speak, just stepped aside. What happened that night was fast and furious and completely outside the realm of anything I had ever known. Yes, he was as big as I imagined. Bigger, maybe. It was almost too much. I wasn't used to being taken like that, like I was something someone had craved for months. He lifted me like I weighed nothing, looked at me like he wanted to devour me. And for the first time in years, I didn't care if I looked pretty, if I sounded polite, if I was too loud. I felt raw, wild, powerful. And in the silence after, when my body was shaking and his hand rested on my hip, I felt something else. Shame. Not because of the sex, not because of him, but because I realized how easy it had been to throw my whole life away for a few hours of being seen. He offered to make me tea. I said no. I left early the next morning. Back home, my husband hugged me tightly, told me I looked refreshed. I wanted to scream. Instead, I kissed him back and felt like a stranger in my own kitchen. I deleted every trace of Sasha K, but I still remember how his hands felt on my skin. And I still wish, more than anything, that I hadn't needed him to remember who I was.